He's supposed to be walking in any minute.
Okay. By the time I get through here, you'll be ready. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order at 6:01. Kelsey?
Here.
Merle?
Here.
Jenny?
Here.
Heidi?
Here.
Glenn will not be in attendance. Chair here. Robert should be here in just a minute or so. We'll go ahead and move on to the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ready? Want to wait for Robert? We'll go. We have a big agenda.
Okay. I just have an update on our financial situation. We have been talking to our departments and buildings about their budgets this year and next year, asking questions, getting answers, and going through everything. We have staff and enrollment information gathered. We're working on class sizes. They're being looked at this year and rolling them up to next year. We've created our seniority list for the licensed and classified because that is the process we'll follow if we have to do layoffs. And we'll also follow the collective bargaining contracts because they both have different information in them, but we will follow those. We'll be speaking with the unions this week. We have a meeting scheduled Wednesday and Thursday.
Wednesday with classified,
Thursday with licensed. And we have started to get some resignations and retirements in, and one or two that we didn't expect. So that's a positive thing for the rest of our employees. We have a list of possible areas of reductions that we'll be reviewing with the unions when we talk to them. We have gathered information and are still gathering information on clubs and athletics and the participation numbers and the amount of students we serve with each of those number of events and that type of information. We have a meeting scheduled for FTE review with a few of us on Wednesday, and then we will meet with the principals on February 4th, hopefully to finalize that and get that information out. We want to have everything complete, and we will have everything complete by March 10th for the board meeting. And that is our day. And we will be presenting contracts for next year for licensed administrators. Any questions for me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Heidi, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Kelsey? Merle?
I was unable to hear, but that's not your fault.
Sorry.
March 10th, you said present contracts.
Yes.
And what was early on? You said something was positive, and that sounds like good news. What was that?
We've gotten a couple of resignations or retirements from people that we hadn't expected them to come from. So that just helps with whatever layoffs or cuts we might
reduced
have to make.
by attrition. Yeah. Sure.
Yes.
Jenny?
I have a dumb question. When you said that we're looking at club and athletic participant numbers, what are some of the clubs like? Is that like music club or drama club, that kind of club?
FFA, FBLA, Awesome, Metcha.
Okay.
We have a lot of clubs.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, thanks. No problem.
Dr. Robert Rodriguez joined at 6:04.
Robert did.
And he just had a brief overview of finance. Okay, moving on. I'm good. I will save my questions till.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Linda. Okay, work session.
All right. Well, I'd like to take a minute to thank and welcome some guests that we have today Ashley, if you'd like to come up here, I don't know, Austin, if you're joining her, you're welcome to come up to the seat here. And so I've mentioned to the board previously about concerns around the future of our football program with declining numbers and not having a feeder program, especially at that middle school level. And so in the fall, I reached out to NMYA, and both being new here, just kind of wanting to understand the organization, what they serve, all the different sports that they serve. And so we had what I felt was a great conversation, and I thought it was a great way to not only have a conversation about what we might do about football, but to hear about their work, because they work to serve the kids in our community. They are our younger feeder program. They serve our future Huskies. And so I've asked Ashley and Austin to come here tonight and share a little bit about their work with NMYA so that we all kind of have a basic understanding of the sports program that we provide for our younger Huskies. And then we'll transition into a presentation on middle school football, past and present and potentially future. So with that, turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. So I'm Ashley Murray. I am part of the executive board for NMYA. I serve as the secretary. This is Austin. He's the current vice president. I just want to start out by saying thank you for having us here tonight. I've been with NMYA for 6-ish years, and I know NMYA has been around for, I think we're going on 50 under various names and all of that. And I don't know of any other time we've been invited to a board meeting to kind of collaborate and get on the same page with the district that we support. So thank you for having us here. Because like you kind of already said, stole some of my words. We all have the same goal, and that's to help develop our youth into responsible, capable, confident adults. You guys do it through the academic world, and we're trying to help it through the sports world. So we're excited to make sure everybody understands what it is that we do for the district. So who we are, that's our vision statement. That's the official one. So it's teeny tiny and wordy. Our bylaws and mission vision statement is available on our website if you guys want to read through that. But basically it boils down to helping kids grow and thrive through fun, safe, and supportive sports programs. Most of our programs are rec level. We focus on that over a tournament ball or anything like that, because we are about the community at large, and the community at large can play and participate at the rec level in greater quantity. So the sports that we currently offer, we try to be a feeder program for the high school. So when looking at adding things to what NMYA offers, we look to what does the high school offer and where is the future of that program. If it were to start at NMYA, does it have a future through graduation? So we stick to those sports. Flag football had its first official year last year, thanks to Austin, who is the VP/football coordinator. We all wear multiple hats. So he was able to get 2 teams for first through fourth, so first and second, and a third and fourth grade, and looking to expand that next year. Soccer, we continue to have pre-K through 6, because then the middle school takes over at 7th grade. And volleyball, we just had a pilot program this year. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but so volleyball full season is coming this fall, and then winter we have basketball for both boys and girls. Cheerleading pre-K through 8, that is co-ed as well. And then t-ball, softball, baseball. So the core sports. Wrestling, I just put that because we do have a wrestling program for North Marion, but it is not run through NMYA. Some people get very confused by that. I think it's the only youth athletics that is not run through NMYA. And that is just because they've always had their own handle on it and they run it spectacularly themselves. So I wanted to speak a little bit to our participation numbers. unfortunately, COVID really shot a lot of things down. And then we kind of had another thing happen. We switched registration programs right at COVID. So I don't have a longevity of numbers, but I gave you what we have for the last 2 years that we could track. Our participation is really great. It's on track historically with what we think registration has been. I don't have hard data to back up that statement. But as you can see, if you look at the one on the right, we're projected to have astronomical participation this year. I took the average of the last years of data for baseball and plugged that in. And once I did, because those registrations, baseball and softball, those registrations are currently open, so we don't have hard numbers there. But we serve a lot of youth for the community, and for how small we are, we have a lot of participation. We move on for that one. And then I broke it down per sport so you guys can kind of see. Predominantly soccer is our largest participation. And then cheer is slowly inching its way up there as the second largest participation number on that one. And then it's really tiny up there, but it's pretty evenly split between the other sports as far as participation. Some big things that have happened in the last year. We read the football at the youth level, like we talked about. And so we're trying to see where that future goes, because we see a gap. We have those fourth graders this year that are already looking to move up to a fifth to sixth grade team. And right now there's no program for that. Austin's working on it. But then even from there, we already have parents going, well, then what? They skip middle school and then what? So we're working on that plan and just getting the love for the game instilled in them young. So then even if there is a gap, they still want to come into high school and have some experience, and it's safer for everybody. That pilot program for volleyball, we did a short 3-week season is what we called it. It was basically practices 2 days a week for 3 weeks. And then they did a big end of the year, like against parents finale. By the time it got up and organized, we couldn't get into any leagues, and we'd never done it. So we wanted to gauge interest. It was open to only 5th and 6th grade, I think, to 2 grades. And there were 25 kids, which is pretty good for just 2 grades. So that is going to look to be more of a full program in the fall. We have coordinators working on that right now. End of season surveys, we have been working very hard as a whole organization to figure out how can we get better parent input? How can we get the information so that way we don't all just hear the complaints at the end? We get the input beforehand in the planning stages. So end of season surveys got implemented a year and a half ago, and what those are mostly confidential. I have access to the contact information as the board member. I'm the only one who knows. Everything else, it's removed, and then it is sent out to the coordinators and the board anonymously, so people have that level of comfort on their feedback. And it's a combination of like generic questions on how the season went, how the sportsmanship was, the coaches, how they did, and then some fill in the blank where they can really give their true honest opinion. And we have had some really good feedback there and used it to shape a lot of our seasons this year. So I think that's really good. We brought back Blazers night, which for basketball is just like a fun thing for us, for all the kids to do. We go as a group and attend a Blazers game. So we're gonna be looking for more of those. And then big things we're looking at expanding that program, seeing how NMYA can help get that middle school gap bridged. We have to collaborate and work together. I personally am trying to move the 6th through 8th winter cheerleading into the middle school as well. That has a large participation number and a low overhead cost. And just getting that out of NMYA, since most NMYA sports cut off at that 6th grade. And it would just align it with all the other sports that we do. And then getting adjustable basketball hoops in the middle school gym, we're probably 89% of the way there with that funding. Everything has been approved on our end. We just haven't bridged that gap to shoot it back to you guys at the school board to make the purchase and get those installed. We want to do that because right now, half of our basketball program has one gym to practice in, at the correct height for basketball. Up through fourth grade, they play on an 8-foot hoop, and gym 3 is the only gym on our facility that can have an 8-foot hoop. The primary school gym does, but that's just different for gym floor and all of that. So we're looking to get adjustable hoops in the middle school to open up another possibility for those younger kids. We are working on collaborating. Sorry, guys.
You're good.
Collaborating with the high school coaching staff. We've had a couple of them give us full program outlines as far as the head coach, like Coach Mack. He gave us a full at each grade level what those kids, what they should be working on, and what he wants to see by the time they get to middle school to be able to do for basketball. He even gave us links to drills and all of that. Our coaches are loving it. So we're trying to get that from all head coaches, but head coaches already have enough on their plate. It's bottom of the priority list. We give out scholarships. We have yet to turn down a scholarship applicant. We fundraise and we work really, really hard with all of our costs to be able to have every kid play that wants to play. And then doing more fundraisers for facilities and equipment like those basketball hoops, all of that. We could always use better stuff. And then coaches training is something that's really hard because we are fully volunteer and it's whatever parent pretty much wants to coach their kid that year. So we want to have a level of coaches training so we have that baseline of what kids are learning at each age, and it's not just up to that parent volunteer as much, and that'll just elevate all youth sports. I don't know, that was a lot. Any questions?
That's really good. We will move around that. Heidi.
Oh, hi, thanks. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Kelsey.
You said the baseball and softball goes through 8th grade
Yes, because they're through JBO. It goes through 8th grade. Softball is hit or miss. It depends on participation numbers. Last year they tried a 14U team. But there were enough registrants, so we didn't have one. Registration is open again this year, and we'll just kind of see how that goes.
And is there still baseball and softball through the middle school? No, so it's just.
Yeah, that's why we absorbed that and made that.
Oh, wow, okay. Oh, that was all.
Robert?
Are you guys getting good parent participation?
It's
As far as coaching and volunteers?
Yeah.
That's one of the harder aspects of being on the board and being a part of all this is volunteers.
Do you think it's the parents are too busy in their lives, or they just maybe don't feel they might have the skills for that?
I think it might be a combination of both. I don't know. What do you think, Ashley?
I think it's both. We hear a lot, oh, I have a full-time job, or I have multiple kids, and I bite my tongue and have to not say me too. I think a lot of the jobs are big. Because we have fewer volunteers, we've all taken on a lot of jobs. So then it's daunting for someone to want to come and take on one of those giant roles. We've been working really hard in our newsletters and talking to parents about just taking on small roles, like just help this coordinator order the uniforms and trying to chunk it down that way to get more parents. And once they see it's not that hard, just getting them in the doors is kind of hard. Yeah.
What about the high school and middle school coaches? Do they have assistants that could help out? It'd be nice to develop the kids from that level, and they're also learning some key words and plays and some of the basic skills.
That's a really good thought.
We would love that.
I can only speak really to the football.
Yeah.
It took 2 years of like planning and getting enough community interest to actually field a couple teams this year, which was great to have. But I worked with Mike Bicknell. I've heard that he's no longer the football coach at the high school, but at any rate, I was working with him and he put on a camp we helped advertise it, got a great turnout for that camp, which I think really helped our program, whereas he didn't necessarily coach or have like a day-to-day
Yeah.
interaction with the program, he definitely helped
Yeah.
get it off the ground.
So my kids go to Wilsonville, but, good, but I live here. And what I found in school is that the kids from the high school, they would coach and referee. And you got them involved and they also got some credit in school. And the kids really love that, to look up, because then when they go see them play on the field, they like, wow, there's this kid down there. Then at the game, they get to go down there during halftime, and you create this atmosphere where they want to be part of that program, and they know that they have to work for it to get there. So I think, getting the kids involved, so at the high school level would be super cool.
That's a great idea. I really like that.
Yeah, when I first started cheer, this is its 6th year, we had the high schoolers would they were volunteer coaches and they loved it.
Yeah.
And they got volunteer hours if they wanted them. Most of them didn't really care about the actual hours, but they got to put on their scholarship applications, and it worked really, really well.
Yeah.
The hard part is that it's their season too, and finding the dedicated, really good, responsible high school athletes are probably doing all of the other things, and it's hard to get them to be able to
But
come.
rec sports usually weekends, right? Most of the games and stuff, and
All of our practices are during the week.
yeah.
And then, yes, a lot of them games are on Saturdays. So, yeah, games should technically work out schedule wise, but
Yeah.
that's good. Good thought.
Thanks.
That's a good idea.
Merle?
Your volleyball program that you're beginning, was that projected to be free through 6th as well?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
We are starting 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grade this next year, and kind of developing and seeing where the interest is. Most volleyball programs don't start until 3rd grade. At club level and stuff, I believe that most of them start at 3rd grade. So it would be a matter of if there's clubs, other leagues to get into at the younger levels.
Jenny?
No questions. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you coming and presenting to the board. This gives us a lot to think about. I forgot to ask you, Dan, if you wanted to chime in anywhere.
No.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
So, well, I guess a good segue would be just that, as we transition into Lindsay's presentation and talking about middle school football, I think and I appreciate Ashley's comment about being the first time that NMYA has been here, because I think that absence of having a group that's active and participating in our community, there's just a lot, people will just speculate on what's really happening out there. And so I think that having a group like NMYA come in and just give a basic overview, gives everybody a basic understanding of what's happening in the community, as in this case, as it pertains to athletics. So hopefully we get to do more of this kind of partnership with people that are active and participating in the community. So thank you both for taking time in your presentation.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, hopefully that we'll have a yearly collaboration where I'd want you to come back and give additional information, so that as we're making projections and plans and strategies for the future, that we keep our roundtable work group going.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming to our work session. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
With that, Lindsay, you should come on up. So Lindsay did participate in the meeting that we had in the fall with NMYA, and then she got tasked with coming to tonight to do her presentation, and I really like the work that she's done here on this, so take it away.
Okay, so we're gonna talk middle school football. So you can go down, yeah, so this is just an overview of what we serve right now. So we have 4 sports in the fall: cross country, volleyball, girls soccer, boys soccer. Our winter season is split into 2, so boys basketball goes first for 8 weeks, and then girls basketball and wrestling goes second for 8 weeks. And so our girls basketball and wrestling, those are average numbers. I think right now we are up to 37 girls basketball players and 41 wrestlers. And then track and field, our average is about 100 and 150. So our students pay between $35 to $50 per sport. It depends on if they qualify for free and reduced lunch. We have a current athletic budget of $10,000 per year. And that budget would need to increase with every new sport that we add, for different costs like uniforms and refs and transportation and all that kind of stuff. So the next slide, this is just our rationale for why prioritizing middle school football is important. A lot of it is the same as all of our athletics, just, getting kids active in school, giving them stuff to do, being a student athlete, but also supporting our high school program and the success that they would have, benefiting from our 7th and 8th graders being able to participate in tackle football, which is something they don't have the option to right now in our district. And it shows as they move up to high school. So a brief history, and I know this might be not 100% accurate. There's a lot of people with a lot of different information out there. So from what I could gauge, it was either 2011 or 2012 was our last season. We had most of the time 1 7th grade team and 1 8th grade team with about 20 kids each on each team. And the games were played at the middle and at the high school, which is gonna have to be a little bit different. We'll talk about that. Okay. So here's our logistics, the first part of it. This is the money piece of it. So we reached out to the same rep that does all of the high school football equipment, uniforms, things like that. The equipment that we do have is outdated, so we can't use it anymore. It's not certified. So it'll be about $15,000 just for the equipment, the uniforms, the helmets, all of that stuff. And that was for 30 players. So if we have more than that, then that would increase. But that would give us a good place to start. Helmets will have to be reconditioned every year and then replaced every 10 years. The quote we got was to buy our helmets so we didn't have to deal with renting them every year. And the youth helmets are cheaper than the high school helmets to buy. They're a little bit smaller. So then we would need coaches, 2 to 4, depending on how many teams we have and how many players come out. And so that's just what their stipend would be per person. Looking at the ref or talking to different schools in our little middle school league, which is different than our high school league, and we'll talk about that. Ref costs are $150 per game, and then for the season we pay $100, $180 in admin fees and $180 in commissioner fees. We also we're only provided 2 refs, and we would have to provide our own 2 refs that were in-house that we committed to be at every game. We'd have 6 home games, and they would have to go through the same training as all of the Salem officials, but they would be hours and hours only. Transportation, that's kind of normal. Helmet refurbishing or reconditioning every year. And then just here and there equipment repairs, just if, uniforms get ripped, things get messy in football, and then game supervision. So that's kind of a breakdown of the cost. The next slide, so the facilities we need, we could practice on the middle school field. We cannot play games on the middle school field. They have to be played on the high school field. So we have to work with the high school team. And then we'd also have to troubleshoot a little bit just because we have 2 boys soccer teams and a girls soccer team. So right now our boys soccer team split the big soccer field out back, and then the girls practice on the football field. And so that would kind of have to be rearranged so we could have football on there too. So our league, all of the schools in our middle school league have football outside of Silverton. Silverton still goes through Tualatin Valley, but the rest of the schools do have football. There are times where Valor and French Perry combine a team, and there are times where the McMinnville schools combine a team. And then sometimes they have a team each, or they have a 7th and an 8th grade in each. And then State and Cascade and Sweet Home are currently in our high school league. Those are the 3 that we compete against, that they see in high school as well, except for our high school football team plays down to the 3A level, so they don't play with them for football. And then we had our 7th and 8th, or 6th and 7th graders do a quick little survey, just an interest. Have you ever played tackle football before? Would you be interested if we offered that? Would that be something you're interested in? We had a surprisingly large turnout. Take the experience playing tackle football for what it is. I didn't specify like organized, not, at recess or all the things. And it is also middle schoolers, so the chances of them just clicking through is always a possibility. But I presented on athletics to all of our 6th graders in their middle school academy class. And that question was brought up a lot, is would we ever have football? What would that look like? Because we do have kids that play in Canby or play in Woodburn right now. that we know of. And that's it, short and sweet.
Do you want to add anything?
Yep.
Heidi?
Hi, yes, thanks. Hi, Lindsay. What is the possibility of grants that might be out there?
That's a good question. That's gonna be something that we're gonna have to look into. Yeah, we're just kind of starting with what is it even gonna take, or what does that look like? And then we can move on from there, so we can start researching grants and different things like that.
Right, right. And that's assuming that you have a startup cost, and then of course, you know, because some of those items you won't have to purchase every year. And then
Right.
just the ongoing costs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Kelsey? Robert?
Do you think that there's a parental, or like the kids say yes, but what about the parents?
I think parents would be more open to it than we would think. From what I've experienced over the last couple of years, is parents want their kids here after school. They want them involved in things. They want them participating. And we
tackle football.
We have a lot of families that like football. So yeah, I don't know if then we said it's at the same time as soccer.
Yeah.
I didn't ask that question on the survey, so that would be kind of the next place to look is if they had to make a choice, what would that look like? But
what about the uniforms? And does the high school, do they have to be upgrading pretty soon, where some of those could be used into the middle school?
Yeah, Mark and I have talked quite a bit that there's a chance that there's some uniforms that we could wear. It's just the sizing can be off a little bit. Some of our kids are really small. So cinching those down and getting them.
Socks on.
Yeah. But that is that opportunity in place to save costs. So we would for sure need equipment, helmets and pads, no matter what, so.
What about, has anybody, has in the school district, have they ever done anything where they do like a fundraiser or like an auction? That, doesn't it that, I mean.
Not since I've been here. Middle school, we tend to not do fundraisers as much because our cost is really, really low.
Yeah.
But I think.
And it competes with some of the high school graduating classes that are fundraising. There used to be a North Korean auction many moons ago.
Yeah.
Again, volunteers were a situation where they didn't have enough volunteers to take over that process, and then on top of it, COVID. So it's kind of wiped out a lot of that piece.
It can generate a lot of income. I mean, I'm just talking about West and Wilson, where they generate a one auction, $120,000 to $140,000 a year.
Yeah.
But it'd be amazing if we could do something like that here. I mean, even just 10,000.
Well, Robert, let us know if you want to sign up for that. Merle?
I had that same question about the those interested, whether the parents were promoting that and would see that they did participate. It's quite a difference in numbers. The other thing I observed is that football is a lot more expensive to equip and conduct the play on than any of the others, but I wondered if you considered dropping one to add another, but I don't think that helps much cost wise.
No, most of our sports are pretty self-sufficient at this point. The only thing that's really expensive for us is rep costs. But we're really fortunate that our high school coaches hand us down a lot of uniforms, so our uniform costs aren't very high. We don't have a lot of coaches, but yeah, football's an expensive sport. But if we want a successful high school program, this is kind of the place that we need to start. Because they just can't safely start in 9th grade and be able to compete, especially if we don't have a JV team. You're just putting them in. You can't put a freshman up against a senior that's been playing for 4 years.
I can see that, and I thought too, there is a liability factor, so you want good equipment.
And there's a lot of regulations we have to follow, like helmets have to be. We have some helmets that could maybe last 1 year, but no company will refurbish them for 1 year because it's just a waste of money. So they have to be replaced every 10 years, and they have to be reconditioned at the end of every season. The pads last a lot longer, which is really nice, but
you have to buy ammunition. That's all
Jenny?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, this is a great plan. I'm really excited to hear that this would be something that the middle school is interested in doing. Is there plans to do it for this coming, like 2025 fall or 2026 fall?
We would like to start it next fall, but if we need more time to raise the money, then we can, when we get the money, we can start it when we have it. But I just need to know our league sets game schedules in April for fall sports. So that's kind of the time that we would need to jump in and say, yes, this is something we're gonna commit to doing. And no, is it one team or is it two teams? What does that look like?
Yeah, and so we would probably be really relying on community fundraising for this.
So the one team versus two team thing, so are some of the schools that were in the presentation, do they have the seventh and eighth grade combined teams? Is that typical?
It hit and miss. Most of them have a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team, or they'll combine. Like Valor and French Prairie always field 2 teams, but sometimes they combine their schools, and sometimes their numbers are big enough that they can do a 7th and 8th at one and a 7th and 8th at the other. And McMinnville does the same thing. Nobody else is really in that situation where they can combine with another town or another middle school in that area. But they all have 7th and 8th grade teams.
Okay, so that wouldn't prevent us from being able to participate.
No, and I was at an athletic director meeting last Thursday, and it was thrown out there that this is something that we're talking about, and they're willing to be accommodating however they can, because they just want their kids to have more opportunities to participate and play too, especially if it's like with us, there's 3 schools in our league that potentially, if our school could ever get back to playing up at 4A level, they'd be playing against. And so that's something that's intriguing for the kids to know that they're playing with them in 7th grade, 8th grade, and then they get to see them again in high school.
Right. And I'm just gonna go back just a minute. So Ashley and Austin, you guys said flag for 5th and 6th potential this fall.
So, yeah. Yeah, we started the program. We just wanted to get started with something. It was a lower cost to start up with flag, get community input. You know, does this community have a desire to have a youth football program? It took a couple of years to build enough kids, so I think for this year, we'll stick with the flag. Through 6th grade.
Okay, so flag 5th and 6th, and then the middle school would field that 7th, 8th. Yeah, so that there would be a long term. Okay.
So could we do? So could
go ahead, Kelsey.
Could we people go reach out to all the different businesses within our community and seek fundraising? And
we have 15 businesses that gave $1,000.
So I'll let Dan chime in here.
So I think that's, I think one of the reasons for having both NMYA here, I mean, a community, when you're a 4A size district or smaller, this is not just a school issue. It's not just an NMYA or outside. It's a community issue with both the district and those people that want to see these opportunities for their kids. And so that's really why I wanted this done publicly with both NMYA and for Lindsay to present, because especially if we just got done hearing Linda talk about seniority lists and reductions and things like that, talking about $15,000 or $30,000 is not something that the school district, but what would our role be in working with the community that may want to really push this through to see what could we do for middle school athletics. So this is really just trying to create community awareness. We have a date by April, which some decisions have to be made. So we've got a few months to try to figure some things out to see what we can do. So that's really trying to bring a lot of community awareness to this opportunity, need, and what's in the way of it happening. So,
all right. Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question? This is Heidi.
Go ahead, Heidi.
Do we still have the boosters at the high school level? Are they still active?
They are active. I did meet with them prior to winter break. I have not followed up with them. From my understanding, they've had a little change in leadership, and so, but that would be an organization to be having conversations about to see what they might be able to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Or should at least be a part of the conversation for sure.
Yeah, thanks. And I just wanted to say that I think that, in the past we've had some successful not baseball, sorry, football teams. And I think that football does play an important role in a community. And having it start at the younger grades is so important because when they get to that high school level, they are better conditioned. They understand the rules. They are safer because because they are in shape and they are ready to go. You know what I mean? And I just think it's a great thing. It's a shame, once again, that we don't have an auction like we had for so many years. That was such a great program that did so much for our community, the money that was raised. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Heidi. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, I'm gonna go for her. Right. So this is ironically titled Superintendent Goals Report, but Des is going to give most of the presentation here. So, but she just does an amazing job of explaining data, what it means, and what we can learn from it. And so, again, these are based on the goals that I presented to you in the fall that you adopted. And so we're here to talk about that. And Des, take it away.
Yeah, and when Dan first talked about how he was going to talk through the goals, we said during the intro we were going to talk about third grade reading and the eighth grade math, and then on track to graduation. So those are the three main data points we're going to hit on. When you look through the whole slide deck, all the past data is on there as well. So the first thing we want to do is give you an update on third grade reading and where we're at. This is just a reminder where our goal is to get up to 40% passing, which is aligned with the state average. So what we have to share with you today on the next slide is this is our current information from the intermediate school. So we give a test that is called HMH Growth. It's aligned to our HMH materials that we purchase for ELA. They give it 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. And what we're looking for is growth on that so that we're indicating where kids are going to be in terms of the state tests. Right now, this year, we're really learning to see how well aligned this data is with our state testing results. Last year, we did not see good alignment. Dave, I remember at the end of the year, scores for the HMH Growth was so excited. It was like, we should see astronomical results on the state test. And then we did not see those results. And we're trying to discover, like, what is the disconnect? Is it about the data itself and what's being assessed on these assessments? Or is it about kids and their experience on the state test? Like that they haven't been exposed to the state test? Are the questions different? Are we hitting the right standards even? Like what is being covered on the state test versus what is being covered in the textbooks? So we're really taking a different lens on this data this year to make sure that we don't put all of our eggs in this basket and recognize that we need to look at multiple data sources to understand how our kids are doing. But what this does show us is where are kids at in terms of their risk level and being off track in terms of grade level standards. And as you can see, just on a snapshot, that red and orange area at the beginning of the year is too big. It's bigger than we would want to see in terms of our third grade reading scores. The good news is on the next slide, this is our mid-year, and you can see growth, right? So that red and orange, just in the plainness of terms, is shrinking. We have more kids at above grade level, and our mid, like on level or approaching grade level is growing, which is fantastic. And on the next slide, we have a more direct comparison. I took all the data so that you could see a side-by-side beginning to middle. And what's great is the way the slope goes up and down is exactly what we want to see. We have more kids in the red bars growing in those areas that are on level or approaching on level or above level. And we see those blue bars too tall and shrinking with the red bars at the below level or far below level. And so we're making good progress. We see that we're having some good results with the program. The key will now be, we're going to do some comparison, and our third grade is actually going to also be giving the state interim assessment, which is aligned directly to the state test so that we give kids exposure to that test. Because for some of them, it's the first time they've had to do like a really long extended sitting in front of a test. First time they've had to maybe do like longer writing on a test. And so we want to make sure that they have those experiences. The more exciting data for me, though, is actually not our third grade data, but what's happening at our primary school. And this is just a snapshot of from David about how we think through the HMH reading, the big picture it gives us. Like I said, he's really focused this year after we kind of relied on that test too much last year. He's been really focused on understanding what the test is actually giving us and what information it's telling us. And how are we using additional pieces of data, diagnostic data, for example, to understand where kids need to be better supported. So for the primary school, though, on the next slide, this is what we're seeing with those reading scores. And this is our second grade scores. And again, they look a lot like the third grade score. It's kind of disconcerting. This is our second versus first grade. And what you'll notice is our second graders right now, pretty high levels of urgent intervention. They give what is called the STAR reading assessment. It's a new assessment to this year. It's very well aligned to the state standards and pretty widely used across our state. But what we're seeing is some really big growth or some better numbers from our first grade team. And we've been digging into like, what is that difference? And part of it, the difference in the bars is that the first grade class is much smaller than the second grade class. Just like, if everyone's like, what are you talking about, Desiree? That does not add up. These are raw numbers, like literal numbers of kids, not percentages of kids. So you'll notice like, we only have 18 kids who are in need of urgent intervention versus 43 kids at the second grade level, and at above benchmark, a lot more first graders already at above benchmark or at benchmark. The on watch is also about even, but we notice their intervention levels are so much smaller at the first grade. And so the question is like, well, why? What's happening with that first grade class? And as we dug into it, what we're seeing is some really phenomenal things happening at kindergarten. And then the first grade team is working with the kindergarten team and carrying those through with first grade. And so one of the things we talked about when we first adopted, which was my first year here when we adopted ELA, I remember, Crystal, you having like, when will we see the results? And like, for me, it's like, okay, now we're starting to see that push. We've seen some really good curriculum being enacted. Those second graders had it the least amount of time. Now we have kids that are really, this is the only way they've learned, and our teachers are becoming better trained in it. And we're starting to see shifts in our numbers, and it's really exciting. The more of those students that go to third grade on track, the easier it's going to be for those third grade scores to go up. When we have that high number of kids in third grade who are significantly off track, we're spending a lot of our energy trying to just get them to grade level, let alone pass the state test. And so we're seeing the shifts going in the right direction when more of our energy can be put towards doing the core curriculum well versus intervention on top of that. It's kind of like going to the doctor where they're like, we can treat your high blood pressure and your type 2 diabetes and all these things, but the better thing would be just like not get those in the first place and just be healthy. And that's easier to maintain than necessarily treating everything when it's off track. And so we're trying to do the same thing for our kids. Like, how do we get them to be healthy readers before they hit third grade so that our interventions aren't as great? And this is a little harder to read on the next slide, but it's the first tests, because they also do it fall, winter, and spring. And so you can see with the kindergarten fall to winter, again, the above scores, it's red. It makes me really happy in that kindergarten. The number of kids, 46, I think, percent of kids are above grade level in kindergarten right now, which is phenomenal, versus just like 16% in that urgent need. It's a complete flip for us. And we're seeing that same thing in those first grade scores. So this is this year, like in real time. The second grades are still, we're like pushing them through that system and trying to get them caught back up. But those first graders will be second graders next year. It's a completely different world. So we're really excited to see how this will start trickling into our third grade scores. It won't necessarily mean that we're going to meet our goal this year, but that we're on track to start seeing some really good results, which is really exciting. I will add too, just as a side note, one of the things I'm really excited about specifically at the primary school is they've done a lot of research and working with the STAR assessment development and recognizing what are the skills that kids need and really being able to pinpoint if a kid has this score, here are the 3 skills that they need, and getting using the early literacy model of high dosage tutoring and really intensive intervention early, fast, so that those kids can close those gaps faster. And so what we're seeing is this really solid understanding from the schools of what skills kids need so that we can close those gaps. It's harder the older they get. The reading, I hear this a lot when we're talking about students and their reading difficulties. We just hear kids can't read. Well, there's a lot of things that could mean. Is it that they don't know what a letter is? Is it that they don't know how to sound out a word? Is it that they don't know how to decode? Is it they don't know how to blend? Is it that they can read the word, but they don't know what it means? Like, what does it mean? But when they're in kindergarten, usually when we say kids can't read, it's like, they don't know what their letters are yet. We can fix that, you know? So that kind of really prescriptive, here are the skills they need, and this is the order those skills build. And once they graduate from this is how they move on to the next skill, is really helping us make those progress that we're looking for. So really exciting. Okay, with 8th grade math, again, here is our goal that we're looking for. We're looking to get at that 27% mark, which is state average. So that kind of tells you a lot about the math and the state of math in the state of Oregon. For the middle school, on the next slide, we use what is called FastBridge for the middle school. It is also a Renaissance product like STAR. And this is our current level. We have about 6% of students who, this is for 8th grade, or this is actually a blend of 6th through 8th grade. About 6% of students who are above the grade level. 41% are at grade level. We have about 15% who are in need of some intervention, and 38% of students who are in urgent need of intervention for their math. And much like I was saying with the reading scores, one of the things that the middle school is working on, and I'm working with them on, is understanding what this means. When the test that we give says, okay, they're green, then what skills does that mean they have? Or when it says they need intervention, what did they miss? What questions did they miss? And what does that tell us about where they need support, so that we can start working with our teachers to make sure the appropriate interventions are put into place. So we're doing a little bit of diving into that data. The other thing you're going to notice on this, just as a piece of information, that 85th percentile and above, Stacy can correct me if I'm wrong, but FastBridge is a nationally normed test. So when it says 85th percentile, it means that the student is scored in the 85th percentile of the nation.
It's
so
the national norm.
Yeah, it's the national norm. So that's also a good indicator of just like, you know, what you have to score to kind of be in comparison to other middle schools. Okay. And then finally, we have our on-time graduation. And right now, our goal is 90% graduation rate. And right now, as of today, or as of a couple days ago, on the next slide, we have our current graduation rates. Right now, we have 71% of kids who are on track, they're gonna graduate, we're good to go, they've met their requirements. And we have about 13% that are on the margin, which means they are currently, and Deanne can correct me if I'm interpreting this wrong, but usually it means that they are currently taking a class that if they do not pass it, they are going to then be off track and need some sort of intervention, whether it's summer school or something else. It might be there's a couple of classes that they're taking that they must pass. It is possible if they pass the things that are in front of them, they're going to graduate, but it is that piece of, are they going to take that opportunity and make sure? But 71% plus the 13% would get us above our current graduation rate, because if you'll remember, we're at about 81%, so that would put us over 84%, which is fantastic. We do have about 8.1% of kids that we know will not graduate. They are credit deficient enough that we cannot do enough first aid to get them across the finish line this year. And they'll either need to stay for a 5th year or possibly do summer school to be able to finish up on time. Or not on time, but still earn their diploma. We have about 7.1% of kids who are earning a GED, which is fantastic. And then we have 7 students who will continue on in our transition program. Those are students who are experiencing disabilities and stay on with us for additional postgraduate years. So we have the potential of meeting our 90% goal, especially if we get those kids that are on the margin. And then I'm trying to remember how GED factors in as a 5th year. And so we might not quite make it, but we are making good progress and growing that rate, which is fantastic. And then we won't share all the rest of it, but this slide below has all the previous data, so.
All right. Well, thank you, Des. So let's go ahead and just do questions here, and then I'll kind of transition to the next one.
I don't have anything right now.
Kelsey?
Yeah, this, the on-time graduation numbers, is this all of the high school, or is this seniors or
so this is just seniors?
Just seniors,
yes.
Okay, just seniors.
Yeah.
You good? Robert? You know the 23, 24, 8th grade math by demographic group? What, when it says 27% is our goal, is, what are we comparing to? Is this like, is it a passing grade or?
That's our goal on passing the state assessment, because that's what goes on our state report card. And 24% passing is what the state average is currently.
Oh, so to pass that exam, then
yes, the goal is to pass that exam.
Yeah. So when it says all students, poverty, ELL, SPED, Hispanic, Latino, white, is that all on the same scale?
Yes, yes.
So the SPED and the white and the poverty are all taking the same test?
Yes.
So SPEDs are doing pretty good.
Yeah, they're scoring on average with our
same test.
Yep.
Cool. You good? Yes. Merle?
It does seem like math is a weak spot.
Yes.
Disappointing to see, but I'm sure there's work that we can do to help that. I had a little trouble with reading this until I understood that BOY, and I said, where are the GIRLs? Several slides later, I woke up to the beginning of your.
That went through, like when I first started and I would talk to people and they'd say, boy, moi, eoi. And I was like, what are you talking about? Beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year.
Sometimes the wheels just turn a little slow.
I was right there with you.
Thank you. Jenny?
Kelsey asked my question about the will not graduate. Is there a further breakdown of that? Like, you're so far that you're missing 4 credits, or is it like a minimum of credits are missing? And you can't make it up over a summer school? So
you can't make it up over summer school.
Okay.
You're that deficient.
All right.
And with summer school, it depends, like we have a couple different options that we've done with summer school. A lot of times it's the class you just took, you just need to finish up the opportunities. And they can take, how many credits do they have the potential of earning if they go summer school?
depending on, it's only 1 to 2 week session for 4 days each week, and so it's up to their drive to get it done. If they get it done before or at the end of June, then they get their diploma this year.
Okay.
If they don't and they come back in the fall, in August, they won't get this year's diploma.
Okay.
But we could get the specific numbers, like of that percentage, like how many are missing 4 credits, how many are missing 5. I don't have that right here.
Are we seeing that some seniors realize that they're in this category and they're like,
Yes.
oh no?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm more worried about the ones that are real close.
Yeah.
Because those are the ones where we are successful to push them through. So that's where our focus is. Our advisors want to know who they are so they can help push.
Yeah.
And so it's a really strong conversation we're having.
Is there maybe a push for the will not graduate to turn them all over to a GED
We've been
opportunity?
doing that. Right now we have 15 kids in the GED program. And that's our limit. So when one gets their GED, then we pull throw in another one.
Okay. Okay.
But there is only certain sessions that we can get them in at a certain time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will add, just from my experience, GED is one of those tricky things. Because there are some kids, it's a miracle. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe the motivation to be at school wasn't there, but the academic background was there, and they can take those tests and are done, and it's what they needed to get started with their life. But there are other students, especially students who maybe have had a ton of chronic absenteeism and just haven't engaged in school. GED has always been meant to be the equivalent of 4 years of high school in a test. And if you haven't engaged in high school for 4 years, you're going to struggle on that GED. And so they go thinking it's a simple solution, and then they get really overwhelmed by it pretty quickly. And then we're worried about a dropout. So really being careful about, like, who do we offer GED to versus is it a blanket solution for everybody? Because sometimes it is. And sometimes it's a marginal, like they'll get a few wins and it will be enough to keep them going. And sometimes it's like the student's going to struggle in GED too, and then really lose motivation.
Yeah. Okay.
And we do have 2 of those GED kids right now are 5th year.
Okay.
So we're trying to get them somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
I love data.
Excellent. I don't need to say it. So I think this last little conversation reflects how hard people are working. I think everybody is working incredibly hard to have everybody graduate on time and be successful. I think Dez's presentation with all the data is, I guess the question that I would ask myself, we should, how data literate are we to understand what this information is telling us to make informed decisions in the classroom, so when the example of the intermediate score or intermediate school anticipating really increased results in the state assessment and it doesn't happen, then there's a disconnect between what we thought this data was telling us and what it really told us. So, and so one of the things in transitioning the conversation into the youth truth conversation is, as we build a new strategic plan, where is the intersection between the goals that we want to establish that are academic and the experiences that we have, our kids are telling us, our staff and families are telling us through perception data, which I think we can find connections between people's experiences and the outcomes that we're having academically. So, are we able to put up the...
Is this what you want?
No. So should be the next one on the agenda.
Yeah, that's new memo.
Yeah.
The first one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So just to remind board members that in my email that I sent you on Friday is that I'm going to go around the room and ask you what is one thing that you would like to know more about. So after this presentation, after you see this, you each have to tell me one thing that you're curious about or would like to know more about. Boy, I saw some panic faces.
Chelsea gets a pass.
Yeah. So it's easy. This is easy. All right. So we're gonna go and we're gonna start with celebrations. So next slide. So we saw increased scores in almost every area of the Youth Truth Survey, which, as I'm going around to schools and talking about, I would have predicted that, because when you increase participation rates, you remove the outliers get reduced in their impact on scores. And so, and when you prioritize something as being really important, I think you get a truer representation of how people feel. So, but it's also very noteworthy to celebrate that we saw increased scores. So this meant improved perceptions from families and staff on, so one area, school safety, you saw across the board a lot of increases in that area. And I want to highlight that word perception. The data we're looking at doesn't say things are absolutely, these aren't like truth statements. These are people's perception. But as we know, perception is reality for people. And so this is just telling us how they perceive our schools. We saw increased student positive perceptions of culture and belonging, which put us in the 50 to 74th percentile. I think that's actually nationwide, not just
national.
Yeah. So, and we'll point out some of those areas. And staff feelings around engagement and culture have increased significantly. So we're going to talk about percent positive. Okay, so this is really hard to see. In the one I sent to you, the colors are going to be a little more prominent. But if you went down the kind of the non-colored columns there in the middle, you're going to see, percent changes, across the board. And then when you look at those percentages, you have to kind of, they're telling you one thing, but you also have to pay attention to, so if we took just the overall student engagement across our intermediate, middle, and high school, had a positive response of 80%. Okay. Now that may sound great, but nationwide, that's less than the 50th, you're less than the 50th percentile. So lots to celebrate, but also areas room for improvement. And then you'll find, because the opposite happens where culture has a 21% positive response, but we're above the 50th percentile nationwide. And again, this is
Heidi. Can I just ask a quick question? It'll help me to understand better. I don't understand. Can you help me to understand better the colors as opposed to the percentage? Because 80% sounds high to me. So are you saying that that we're still one of the lowest, even though it's 80%, we're still in the lowest in the nation?
That is right? Correct.
So what, people are usually like 90 or 8 or 100?
Well, I think one thing about Youth Truth is that and I'm going to try to show you some examples here in a little bit of how deep you can dive into this to what generates that 80% positive response. And so I think it's worth celebrating or honoring that, hey, that's not bad, but we know we could do better. But if that's the area that we're curious about, then we got to dig into what's causing that score, what's causing those scores, which we're going to get to. So,
Dan, can I?
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, engagement, our percent for student is 80%.
Positive response.
Positive response.
So 80% of the scores were a 3 or a 4.
Right.
A 4 or 5.
Yeah.
4 or 5.
And then the bottom, at the very bottom of the page, and I don't know if you see this, Heidi, it tells us compared to the national data.
Correct.
Where we're at.
Yeah.
Right. I see the color bars down there. the legend. So in our previous survey, it was 87% then, because it says -7. Is that how you read that?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay.
One more question, and then I'm sorry to keep interrupting.
No, it's okay. I mean, this is important to know what you're, I mean, as we go through this, that we have an understanding of it. So go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't take this test. So you had a choice of like what 1 through 5 or something as a like, you know,
yes,
like a strongly agree, strongly disagree kind of thing, and in between or something like that.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, so it was a 1 to 5 rating scale, and then we'll show you some of the questions that the kids, students, or student staff and families responded to those. Yeah. So the next one is average rating, which just looks at the same. It tells you kind of what number in terms of 1 being. I think 1 is strongly disagree, 2 is disagree, 3 is neutral, 4 is strong as agree. And 5 is strongly agree, and it kind of depends on the grade and the age level as well. So again, that just kind of looks at the same data in a different way. So moving on, looking for patterns. So we found some, so we're looking for alignment. So if we looked at safety, and you can see here's the question. Here is a question that was asked and the response rate. So for an elementary school, do you feel safe at school? So that those kids are getting a yes or no. Okay. And then the middle school or high school is getting I feel safe during school. And that's where they're giving the rating.
The first one was a rating also. It was how much do you agree with the following statements?
Thank you.
See, I got to pay attention to some of it.
Yeah. So, and then the family is my child's learning environment is safe. And again, a rating there. So that one question has its own percentile rank. So what we were just looking at before was all the questions that may have led to a score in safety. And so then how do you want to drill down to go which areas within safety, if we pick that one, that we'd want to tune into? All right, so for example, so here are all the safety questions for the high school. So you can see high school students had a lot of questions that they answered about safety.
And the reason there aren't high and low scores, so on the families and staff, the green indicates the highest scoring question that they answered, and the red is the lowest scoring question. There are no high lows on students because it was the first year they've done these questions, and so they did not rank them from Youth Truth. But next year would have a high low score as well.
So this starts giving you some ideas of, so, if we want to pick things to focus on to understand why this is people's perception, this starts giving us some ideas of what we might look into to better understand people's perception. So, because you can see a connection there on that one where you have families saying, scoring low, that my child is safe from bullying during school, and staff are saying that one also was a low score. Students are safe from bullying at my school. So we would probably want to dig into that. If both staff and families are reporting that, why is that? So when I asked you earlier about your curiosity question, so that's the kind of question that we're trying to, when we look at this, what do we want to know more about? So then we move on to safety at the middle school. Oops. Just gonna let that hang out there for a little bit, and we can go on to safety questions at the intermediate. So So I'm gonna throw out another thing that I saw. So if we go back 2 slides to the high school. So notice that the highest one for high school staff is I feel safe from harm during school. That was the highest rated one. Okay, go to the middle school. That's the lowest one. The intermediate school, lowest one. So what is staff perception that's leading to that type of response? So just something just a pattern that I noticed. So, all right, we'll move on to the next one, finding alignment around respect. So on this particular question, you could say, does your teacher treat you with respect? And for middle and high school, adults at my school treat students with respect. We had 86% report positive. For the staff, the question was, staff treats students with respect. Pretty decent alignment there.
And these specific alignment questions are also ones that Youth Truth specifically pulled out and said, here are places where all your stakeholder groups are kind of answering in the same way and show a pattern of strength for your district or a pattern of weakness for your district.
We go on to the next one with relationships. No, we didn't get a staff response on this one.
There weren't questions that were
okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe it wasn't in alignment.
All right, so if we go into relationships, so here, this is specifically to the high school, and you can see where students, so in high school, the highest rated question in relationships was, how many of your teachers connect what you're learning in class with your life outside of school? That was the highest rated one from students at the high school. And then on staff, you can see staff reported high that I feel comfortable approaching other staff members if I need help solving a problem. That was the highest rated one from staff on relationships. And the lowest was I feel comfortable speaking honestly to families about their child's progress. So we're going to talk about that one in just a minute. Actually, next slide, we'll go to the middle school. So, so it'd be interesting to ask students, if you look at the middle school one, how many of your teachers are not just satisfied if you pass, they care if you're really learning? So that was scored lowest from our middle school students. But if you look at the families and staff one on that same area, families scored low that they feel comfortable approaching teachers about their child's progress, and staff reported, I feel comfortable, scored low. I feel comfortable speaking honestly to families about their child's progress. So clearly we can look and say, why do we have this issue about speaking honestly about our child's progress? Why do parents struggle to come to conferences and have an honest conversation? What is that? So why is that perception there? All right, and on to the intermediate. Wrapping up. So you can see, like in each of these areas, and I just gave you a couple of them, I gave you examples of all the questions and relationships. I gave you examples of all the questions in safety. There's culture, there is professional development. I mean, all of these areas have multiple questions to dig into. And so what I've started doing is last week I was at the middle school and kind of giving them a similar type of presentation. and then they give me feedback on what questions I should be asking parents based on what they viewed. And so I'm doing the same thing tomorrow morning at the middle school. I'll be at the primary school on Thursday. And the primary school did not participate in the official youth truth. We gave them kind of our own homegrown one, so we do not have the data to present on that. And then next week I'll be with the intermediate school. So with that, I'll go around, and what is something you're curious about or would like to know more about? We'll start with you, Robert. Oh, bro. All right, man.
Well, I do think it's interesting because we have talked a little bit about this, about bullying, and that that's your perception of what bullying could be. I mean, one girl could be having a bad day and her friend said her hair was terrible. And the other one could actually be getting bullied and, being thrown in the locker. And yeah, I've done it. I've been thrown in the locker. It was a good experience, but I deserved it. But dude, so I'd be actually more curious to find out like where is that benchmark for bullying? It's such a big variable.
Merle?
Well, if I understood you rightly, we need to understand that that's someone's perception. They probably didn't study this for a week before they took it. And so we just need to consider it in that light. It helps me to know what the highlights meant, which I didn't know when I looked at it earlier. But question, do the ones that are not highlighted mean that they fell somewhere in between?
Yes.
You've given us the high and low. Yeah.
And I'll point out too, just because it was part of our discussion, is like sometimes even that low one might have a 3.8 score on it or even higher, but it was the lowest of the questions that were asked. So there were other ones, every other one still scored higher than that one, even though it might have a decent score.
So it might not be all that low or mean that that's really a problem. Like you mentioned, this bullying question, which comes out low consistently, and a communication question comes out low consistently, both family and staff. But it may not mean that altogether if you looked at the numbers.
Right.
So we should study it a little.
Sure, it's still at least significant that of all the questions, it received a lower score. It tells us something, especially if the trend was to be more positive and then this one suddenly was a bit lower. But you're right, we want to go a little deeper and make sure we're looking apples to apples.
Yeah, it would help to know if those are just a 10th difference and that's all.
Exactly.
Or more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would echo Robert's comments on the bullying. That's interesting. I think it is based on perception, but knowing that the staff also rated that pretty low, like that's concerning. Like, and it's hard for me not to switch into like solution mode of like, okay, let's have a chat. Let's see what some solutions are to this. Are we seeing and not reporting, or that kind of thing. I'm gonna try and just stick with the data. I know that's so hard for me. So the bullying, but then I'm sorry, I'm picking more than one. Is that okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
I have 3.
Okay, I have 3 too. And then families not wanting to have honest conversations with their teachers and teachers not wanting to have honest conversations with parents. Like, I really want to see that communication and connection improve. And I don't know if that's a relationship issue or, are teachers afraid of giving negative feedback? Or is it parents are just blocking, what teachers have to say? I don't know. But my initial deep dive when I first went through this was trying to understand on the 3rd page under instructional methods. We had an 11% drop with students, and we're still in the 0 to 24th percentile. I'm interested to know more about that.
That would be a good one to dig into. Especially one thing to piggyback on that we had, you know, at the middle and intermediate school, we had 100% participation. So this isn't, you know, so you can't write this off as being, well, we didn't get the participation that we wanted. So while, you know, somebody may have not have been thinking as, you know, about the question being asked, when you have 100% of your students reporting something, you can't ignore that. You've got to figure out, so what are the questions that were driving that score down? So I'm sorry, Crystal, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I had bullying, high school, middle school, intermediate school, relational connection pieces, the EQ between why each person is struggling. And I noticed that at the high school, middle school, intermediate school level. And just to prove, Jenny took my note on instructional.
I wrote this up here days ago.
Instructional methods. Because like, I'm with you. I'm like, why did it go down 11%? And quite frankly, why is it in the 50s? I mean, those are two strong pieces of information that I would like to know more about.
Kelsey?
I wrote the relationship, the communication with families approaching teachers and staff approaching parents, and why that is.
Yeah.
Kind of like the others said. And I've had personal experience too, just with not hearing and from teachers and having to reach out to them and then getting feedback. And we had one teacher that was really great, and it's just so helpful as a parent, in my perspective or opinion anyway, just to hear how my kids are doing and just getting those regular updates and stuff. But I don't know, maybe it's our job to reach out to them too, but I don't know why people would be afraid, or you know what I mean, like whatever it said, the struggle, what did it say?
I feel comfortable approaching teachers about my child's progress.
What the uncomfortableness is, I don't know. So
yeah. And then what, you know, I also kind of go into fix-it mode a little bit too. You know, I'm sitting there thinking, so what if conferences, we had established a protocol where we asked parents to ask your teacher one tough question during conferences, or what if the teachers had a protocol to say, I'm going to give 2 positive comments in an area that your child can improve upon. Because the only way you actually get better at getting through what may or may not be comfortable is just to practice being uncomfortable. That's the only way you get better at not being uncomfortable is you've got to practice being uncomfortable. So the only way you do that, I mean, if you just ask people to try harder, it doesn't work. So Heidi, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, that tactic is working, and I can testify to that because you've been challenging us as a board since you came on, giving us assignments, just like this is a good example. No, it's really good. Well, again, with the communication piece, and the questions have been asked and you've kind of answered. I guess my question is, you know, when we get feedback like that looks like it's pretty consistent and pretty clear across several of the school buildings, how do you as a leader, approach solving that? I mean, it doesn't really fall into any one category. So, you know, how do you take something like that on? And you kind of answered that.
Well, no, I mean, it's like eating an elephant. You do it one bite at a time. And so one thing that I'm doing is I'm meeting with each of the principals this week and asking them to look at their staff survey data and pick 3 question areas that were like the lowest from staff feedback and say, which of these 3 can I help improve in the staff perception really of them and their leadership. And so how can I get better at that? So trying to have staff or have principals model that, that I can look at this data that doesn't make me feel good and try to do some, what could I do in these areas to improve? So, so that's one thing, is to have leaders model that I can look at tough data and do something about it. The other thing, and this is a great segue, is that on Thursday, I'm going to be at the middle school community forum night, and I'm going to be presenting the middle school data with them. And so this is our little practice run of our strategic plan building, is also looking at the academic data, but then asking, so to the bullying question, so, we'll probably have a time to ask about, a question around, why do you believe bullying is a problem at the middle school? Or what could the middle school do to solve the perceived bullying issue that you report? Something along those lines to get it. Is it simply that, well, my kid says kids are mean at school? Or is it, or what's the severity of the bullying issue? So being able to, so you have to take this information and then ask deeper questions about what led that to be the perception. So
I think to the point Dan just made, one of the things we're working on with principals is that level of digging into the data, because often the thing we just had a meeting with the principals a few weeks ago, and it's like the problem named is the problem solved. And often we named the wrong problem because we just got a surface level understanding of what the issue was and we didn't ask deeper questions. So is it that we don't have a clear understanding of what bullying is? Is it that no, truly bullying is rampant and there aren't clear systems for it? Is it what, right? And so many of these, and it's interesting just because I've been playing in it a lot, how often you will see a question and it'll be like, teachers do this, and it will rate really low. And the next question is the same question, but in the inverse, and it will suddenly rate very high. And it's like, but this is the same question, just phrased slightly differently. And one you give them outstanding marks and one you didn't. So it's like, even understanding, like, is this a question to pursue if it's pretty much contradicting itself? So I wanted to add two just really quick, since two of you brought up the academic instructional methods, academic challenge is what it's called at the high school. The questions, because once again, the data makes it seem like it's instructional methods where they're giving feedback on like what instruction specifically looks like. Mm-hmm. But the question is like, do my classes make me think? Does my teacher help me? Do my classes apply to the real world? Let's see, in order to get a good grade, I have to work hard. My teachers explain things in a way I can understand. The work I do makes me think. They give me assignments that help me better understand. So that's kind of what instruction looks like, which I find fascinating because it's actually more of a philosophical, like, are you just sitting getting, or are you actually engaging the kids? It's about engagement versus we tried this new pedagogical instructional technique. Did it work? It's really like, are the classes making you think? So just so I wanted to give a little context to that one because I thought it was really interesting when I read those.
And that was middle school and high school?
At the primary or the intermediate school got questions about it too. They're simplified, they weren't as long. Like the high school has a ton of the questions and the middle school has a few less, and then the intermediate school is more like, my teacher helps me, my teacher explains things in a way I understand. My teacher, I can ask my teacher for help and things like that. Okay. And then on the district summary one, they just call it instructional methods. On the individual school ones, they're sorted out a little bit more differently.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend a ton of time on this. So, like, we didn't even get into the culture category. I can tell you that there is data that I'll share with the high school tomorrow that talks about around culture, around having high expectations, and if scoring lower, again, overall seeing some improvement from last year to this year, but again, we didn't have great participation last year. But basically, there's probably some agreement that our expectations aren't high enough from multiple groups. So that would be an area to dig into too. So
put my name on that one. All right.
Heidi, did you get all your questions? Did you Did you have any more?
I did, but I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Heidi.
All right. Because we got more on this agenda.
Yeah.
We could stay here and move back up so are we moving to policy?
We're doing superintendent advisory work group.
Yep, still.
Okay. You want this one?
No.
I want to dive into all that data. I want to drill down. Do you want to click all the buttons?
I want to click all the buttons.
Okay.
So because we have policies to work through, so I just I wanted this just out in the public view is that there is a new state law or expectation around every district having an equity committee. And so I'm not calling ours an equity committee because I think I like more words than less, because then people have a better understanding of what we're talking about. And so ours is called a superintendent advisory work group, which means they're going to advise me and they're going to do work as a group for equitable experiences and outcomes. So we're talking about, and someone tried to do an acronym, don't acronym it, because then people will get more confused. So if you're in a small group and you want to call it the work group, that's fine, but I'm calling it this. So that we can have a group that advises me so that I can bring their feedback to you around what are the equitable experience and outcomes that our students and families will share with us. And so you can look through the attachment that's on there. We're going to release the application, and we are talking about groups of people that have not always been served well, or whose subgroups that have not performed well or haven't been represented. So Irma's done quite a bit of work putting the application together. We'll release that tomorrow. If you know people that you think should be part of that work group, please encourage them to apply. We have an electronic and a paper version. Not to put you on the spot, Irma, is there anything else you'd like to share about that?
No, we have had meetings with, I've had meetings with counselors and also with principals, so that they are aware that, again, we're looking for the voices of our students, because students are part of this group as well, but that are not the ones who are always at the table. So again, representing some voices that we've not necessarily heard before. So if you think of anyone that would be, wanting to be part of this group, just let them know about the application, and we're really hoping that we have a lot of interest.
I'll just chime in that this all is mandated through Senate Bill 732.
Yep.
Yes.
And that you do have to vote to approve the group. So I believe that's in the law.
Yes, that you
but I'll bring you the names and then you approve them.
What how many people are part of this group, and what does the group do they have monthly meetings, or like?
So we are looking at having, what did we say, about 6 to 8?
So it would be at least one a quarter, and then some possibly more than that. So at least 4, so really 4 to 6. It might be that something comes up with that group that they really want to bring to Dan. And so as things come up, there may be more,
4 to 6 meetings
a year.
And how many people?
And about 10 for our district size, it would be approximately 10.
We didn't set like that has to be a certain number. It just kind of depends on the number of applicants. But I think anytime you get a committee more than 10, then you're really going to struggle to kind of get a focus and recommendations. And we are asking people to make a 2-year commitment. So 4 to 6 meetings per year. That's on the application.
Question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the 2-year commitment or term mandated in the bill?
No, it's not. And so we just saw that in other districts that we were looking at to try to have some consistency. So there might be a stronger commitment. So it was just what we saw some other districts doing.
Yeah, I wondered if you would consider half of them as an initial 1 year, and then after that is 2 years, and so you always hopefully
Well,
have
that's
some
good.
to carry over if you don't have time.
That is a good suggestion.
Can I could
Yeah.
add to that? So, on the student piece, that is something that, cabinet talked about, because it might be that there's a senior
Oh,
on
sure.
the committee, but yet they may graduate, which may bring in and have another spot open for another student to come in. So there might be attrition just regularly depending on people's commitments, moving in and out of the district. It does have to be community members that are living in the district, students that are in our district.
Well, because we're short on time, is there any other questions? All right, moving on. You good?
Yes. All right, so we are back with board policies. So we posted on the agenda OSBA's updates from November and a few policies that came in December. And you submitted questions, concerns, and I hope that you like the document that Diane helped put together here with just how we sorted the questions out. I think we just kind of keep getting better at this process. So I'm just, why don't we open that and just, that might help at least me.
Folder update.
No,
That's just where each policies know what you need to open.
Scroll down to the bottom,
Is the link that was in.
very bottom.
the PDF one.
Nope.
Keep going.
Yeah, good.
There.
No, I'm good.
I think this might help guide us so that we can expedite if we don't have, if there are no questions. So you can see the question that was asked around on policy GCAA around TSPC. Are there any additional questions or discussion on that?
No, thank you.
Nope.
Sorry,
All
sorry.
Yep. Okay. And then I love all these letters. GCBDF, the paid family medical leave insurance. Diane, that was one that we're keeping the October 14th, 2024 adopted policy, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I know there was questions around policy IIA instructional materials, and so there are some questions in there. So I answered those. And so I think the big question was, the board review is removed except in the matter of reconsideration of core materials. So, and if we were to open IIA, which is the policy that you adopt, it outlines who's responsible for the selection of materials. Now, core instructional materials is the curriculum that you approve when we're going through a curriculum adoption. And so that is the area where if there was I'll just, for lack of a better word, a complaint about some core materials, that process could get adjudicated all the way through the board. And the reason why I opted to remove the board from ARs 2 and 3, 3 and 4. 3 and 4 is because the board is not involved in the selection piece of that process, but these ARs, ARs 3 and 4, actually 2, 3, and 4, all have very outlined reconsideration steps that are to be followed, who's part of those decisions. And so, and then I would say that really, if someone were to appeal a decision of one of these committees that decided on a reconsideration, as superintendent, I would not be very inclined to overrule a committee's decision, because that's made up of teachers, that's made up of community members. My job would be simply was the process followed? Because why would we have an AR that establishes a committee and a process if the superintendent could just overturn that? So that would be, or if we put the board in there, is that this is a group of people that were called together to review something that somebody wanted materials reconsidered. And we have this outline process that could just get overturned because the superintendent or somebody else felt differently. I think that these processes are very well outlined in these ARs. And so, so that's sort of just kind of more of a philosophical piece about that. But ultimately why I selected that the ARs 3 and 4 would end with the superintendent is because the board was not involved in the selection of the materials to begin with.
Do we have access to them from here?
Yeah, so it's the last link on the agenda, I believe.
Somehow.
Down under D.
I've seen it before, I know, but,
Merle.
oh, now I'm lost. Oh, it's part of this?
Yeah, it's in the agenda, and if you just clicked on
It's like the very last link.
yeah, that's
My machine's not working too well.
Yep, right there.
Oh, okay, gotcha, thank you.
So on this, it's only for reconsideration of instruction materials that would have been like denied before or reviewed and denied before kind of thing. Like I'm trying to think of like a real life.
I think it would be more, someone disagrees with what was adopted. Like we want to reconsider why this was adopted in the first place.
Okay.
So help me understand, say before we adopted the English language curriculum, we had like all that rogue supplemental curriculum that was being used. Not in every classroom, it was like a hodgepodge. So how would that look if we wanted to reconsider some of that?
So there's a couple things. One is, I was talking with Dan today, one of the processes we're looking to get instated is a more formal process for getting supplemental material approved. So when I want to introduce something, what is the process documented that we go through? That hasn't existed before now.
Right.
So that's first part. So
yes.
Even when there is a objection to those materials, often it was like, oh, you're using what? I didn't even know you were using that because that wasn't something that went through this process, right? So we're trying to change that aspect. What we have to consider, the piece that gets sticky is that there are the supplemental materials, like I want to have this novel, I want to do a class set, let's buy this novel, everyone's going to read this novel. And then there are the materials that teachers use when they're just prepping their lessons and, oh, this YouTube video would really illustrate this point, or here's a quick article that I found that was published today. If we try to go through a formal process to adopt all of those, that's all I'll be doing forever and ever and ever. We have a K-12 system. So some of that goes to then professional responsibility. How are we making sure we're training teachers? How are we using policies like controversial topics, et cetera, to make sure teachers are making good choices? But when it's something more formal, like we want to use this short story in this unit, or you want to use this novel in this unit, what is the formal process? Or I want to use this computer program. We started piloting the process last year when Cheryl wanted to introduce a program called Reading Horizons, which was a reading supplemental support program. And so we kind of used like the steps of like, okay, how are we going to adopt it? What would be the process? It's not formal, it's not a curriculum or a set of materials, but it is supplemental. And so these type of things would be like when someone objects to those materials, what is the process? And when it's a rogue objection because we weren't aware of it through a formal process, that's one set of things because that's really a principal issue to deal with the teacher, almost like disciplinary, right? Not, that might be too strong, but potentially, right? You are not following materials as outlined in our curriculum maps. When we've gone through a formal process, like we've all read this novel and then there is a community complaint, we don't like that novel, then the AR clearly outlines here's how we would review that to go through it.
So for example, and just walk me through like how this would look. So for example, we have like a 4th grade teacher that uses YouTube that has something that's controversial and potentially sexually explicit. How would a parent be able to appeal that through the process? And how as a board could we give guidance to those who come and bring forth information that we hear their concerns? So there's like our job as a board to represent our voters and our community, but are also maintain the swim lane of operations.
Sure.
But how would that look in between there if the board didn't have the final say?
So on the policy itself, IIA, it says this policy is not intended to cover classroom activities. Complaints regarding classroom activities regarding unrelated to materials can be filed using other established district complaint procedures. Right. So I think the use of, the maybe more random use of videos, an instructional, maybe it could even be a way we group kids to do this activity. I want you to all do this activity and it goes awry, or kids are made to feel less than because of, that would be more of an instructional, a classroom activity, not a material. So where that line is exactly at, I probably couldn't draw a specific line, but the example I heard you gave, I would say that's a classroom activity versus a material that we're using broadly across a grade level or across a particular course.
Okay, perfect. I'm fine.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions on that one before we move on?
So the next one is IKF graduation requirements, and I think our team may still have a little bit more to work on this one regarding to make sure that we're maintaining our credits at 25, because I think I saw some footnotes in the policy that we have to, if we're going to be above the state, we have to outline what that is. So I think we have some work to do there. And Cheryl, did you have something to add on this one as well?
Yeah, with the notification that we have to do starting grade 5 for students with IEPs, it says standard, modified, and then it's missing extended diploma in 2 places. So we need to just take a look at that.
Okay.
So I will let you know on if the language changes on IKF, I will let you, when we go for adoption on February 10th, I will let you know what that is.
Okay.
All right, so then IKFB graduation exercises.
No comment?
That was one where I raised the question, if you were regarding cultural heritage, and it just seemed like leaving it open to a variety, a plethora of cultural symbols. Just, I don't know if we want to do that, but it puts us on the defensive rather than the Native American one is mandated, so you do that. But it was an honest question, and there was an answer given here.
Are you satisfied with that answer provided to your question, Ron?
The board unanimously agreed to include this, it says, so I guess I wasn't part of that, but it must have been before my time.
Well, and I think the language is intentionally broad of other items of cultural significance. So I think, I have not attended a graduation here, but given the number of Latino students that we have, I would anticipate that we would see, some representation of their culture and Deanne's nodding in agreement. So I think depending on where you live, and the makeup of your student body, you're going to see some different things. So, and I do think that the language is really clear that districts can prohibit items that may cause a substantial disruption. So,
and that's where I thought it puts us a little more on the defensive side, because you have to come against it, but maybe that just has to be in our day. I guess I'll resign to it, but I did raise the question.
I personally don't have a problem. I sat on the board during that time, as did Heidi. Heidi, feel free to chime in on anything. I think we did agree that the other items of cultural significance had a great deal to do with our demographic of our student body population, and making sure that everyone there felt like they could participate how they wanted to within strict guidelines as laid out in the student handbook. So, I mean, it's not like a free for all. There is like really strict requirements around what can be worn.
So I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So even though it says that in policy, I know graduation requirements and in the student handbook and some other things, there's like clear criteria that have to be met in order for you to be able to wear that. If that helps any.
I think it does. And it makes a difference to me if the rest of you are all on board with that.
All right, so IKJ, any other questions?
We know how I feel about optional policies. But if I was the only one that had questions about it, I'm not the hill I'm gonna die on.
I assume this is one of like upcoming policies regarding AI, right? Yeah, I mean, is this like the soft version?
The one thing that they're really saying in general, and I've gone to a lot of different COSA and national kind of looks at AI, is they're really careful not to get too tight, actually, because AI changes so fast that as soon as you get too tight, you have to create a new policy. So it's like, what they're really saying across the board is get some guardrails in place, and then really use more handbooks. And I've been working with Greg really closely to create one to really help us mostly support how students are using AI, so that they can do it safely and we're not potentially in a privacy data breach kind of situation with it.
So this is just giving us the
guardrails.
A guardrail to address AI in the future. Not that we have any rules against or for yet, and that will come down to.
Yeah, Greg and I are working on that. We're trying to again keep it broad, and then create clear processes for requesting the different tools and who gets access and how they're used. But I will say I have a son who's a freshman in college, and each one of his professors started the new school year going, AI is real, here's what we're gonna do with it. And he's being encouraged on almost every assignment to use AI in one way or another.
It's taking over everything, and it is a tool to be used responsibly. I mean, in healthcare.
Yeah, and if we're not teaching people how to use it responsibly, they're gonna get to college and be lost. So
yes, agreed. Okay, thanks, moving on.
All right, so we are at JECA.
Any additional comment on that? The questions that were, or the question that was asked, is that answer and suggestion and answer enough for you?
Can I ask for some explanation on the question that was asked, the suggestion about choosing will not because I don't really see the policy up in front of me, so I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about there.
So let's see if I can pull it up here.
And if you click on that link.
This is the admission of resident students.
So the recommended language is the district may, based on district criteria, provide an alternative program of instruction to a student who has become a resident student and who is under expulsion from another district for a weapons policy violation. So I think, and so there was a question that this should be, the district will not provide alternative programs.
Go down just a little because it's on 9. Okay. Oh, I thought it was on 7. Oh, yeah, 9.
So I think the more flexibility that we can have, I mean, we have on occasion upheld expulsions when students have been expelled from other schools and become our residents, but I think that there may be reasons to have a student attend an alternative program if we feel like we can meet their needs and we understand the situation behind that. So I think that anytime that we can have some flexibility in those decisions, that we ought to do that. And it was previously the policy I was told was May.
And this calls out specifically a weapons policy violation.
I would suggest keeping it with May, just because a weapons policy violation, it doesn't always mean a gun. It could mean a pocket knife sometimes. It can mean a number of things. And I think you have to leave, this is an instance sometimes where it should be case-by-case determination once the whole, all the information around a situation is known, and I would trust the administration to make a decision on that would keep people safe, but also be fair.
And if it was an alternative type of program, it could be, doing online work after school hours, in kind of a very supervised setting. So it's not like we're just allowing a student to come right, into the school without guardrails.
What does being a resident student by definition mean?
Well, that means they live here.
Is that one off campus or on campus?
Well, that means they moved into our residence, so they are ours. They've moved into the North Marion School District. But if they bring an expulsion with them, we can uphold that expulsion, depending on the rule, especially for a weapons violation. We can uphold that expulsion, or at least the terms of it.
Well, that was my thinking. I agree with Heidi.
Yeah, I'm with Heidi. May.
Okay.
Kelsey, you good? Benny? Yeah.
All right, so JHCDAR medications.
I'll just point out that ARs don't need to be approved by the board.
Okay, no comments on that one for whoever asked the question
around medications.
Good. All right, let's move on.
All right, JHFF.
I'm not sure who asked this comment, but is the answer provided sufficient for your comment?
I see what's saying it's statutory. And that was my question. It was my concern that you're looking at a student, one who is not a minor and one who is. And that's why I made the comment about violation of law, that there are certain laws that enter in then and may cover that situation. It just seemed like a compromising situation to me.
Yeah, would I be correct in stating this has a lot to do around our students who could have sped services that qualify for up to age 21?
Well, I think that what the policy is really, the student to student piece is that, that if we hire a student to work for, it doesn't really matter what age they are. If they are in a working capacity employed by the district, they cannot be having also a relationship with a fellow student. So yeah. So if we hire a student, and working in a capacity, they can't also have a relationship with a classmate if we're paying them to be in that case, an employee of the district. So
I see.
That's how I read this policy.
And maybe I was misreading it. I read it to deal with student to student. Why one was older, which rarely happens, but it does. And that's what it was speaking to.
Yeah,
but I'm struggling to find it here. We must have the G letters on here first. And
because we do have students who are 18 and 19
that are finding it on the list, so I can look at it.
Can serve students up to 21. So
right,
student to student, it would apply.
Do you have any other questions around that? Merle, are you?
No.
Okay. And then general policy questions?
Those are just questions that got submitted during this process.
Are we done?
Diane, can they make a motion in this meeting for first adoption? I mean, first reading. Not adoption, first reading.
Yes, we can do a motion. It'd be kind of like if we did it all these like in a consent agenda. So
you need it read out.
Well, you don't need to list each policy. You could just say that for the November and the December as presented, the ones that are adopted or re-adopted or
first
review for first reading.
So before we get through the end, do I hear a motion to do first reading on the November and December policies that are brought forward as presented?
I'll make a motion that we accept the November and December policies as the first reading as presented. Second. Is that good?
Yeah. Is that what you need?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So hearing a first and a second, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay by Merle. Motion carries. I don't see anything else on the work session, but I'll double check with Brian first.
I don't think there's anything.
Okay, we'll adjourn at 8:10 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I got some weird reference thing.
Totally forgot.
You're not any.
Well,
I would say that. They're fishing me.
I would have preferred to just abstain, or if there'd have been. I think we can.
Yeah.
Oh, he was saying whether to vote nay. We didn't specify the line where we said change from may to will not. And I think we get enough running.
Oh, we do. Yeah.